Good afternoon, beautiful souls. Let's talk about something that we often tuck away in whispers, blushes, or silence, but today we're bringing it into the light, not for shock value, not for scandal, but for truth, for health, and for empowerment. Today, we're diving into a topic that impacts far more than our bedrooms. It touches our minds, our bodies, and our emotional well-being. Yes, I'm talking about sex, or rather, the surprising side effects of not having it, especially for us as women. Because here's the thing, society teaches us to suppress, to sacrifice, to put our needs last. But ladies, your body is not just a vessel of duty, it's a temple of vitality, and what happens when we ignore one of its core needs? The silence can speak volumes in our energy, mood, confidence, and even our health. So let's break the silence. Let's talk science, soul, and self-worth, and let's reclaim our right to know, to feel, and to thrive. Are you ready? When we think about the absence of sex in our lives, we often consider only the emotional or relationship implications. But for women, the effects run deeper into the very chemical fabric of our bodies. One of the most significant consequences is the disruption of hormonal balance, which has a ripple effect on our mood, mental health, and even our physical vitality. Sex is not just a physical act, it's a hormonal symphony. During intimacy, our bodies release a cocktail of hormones like oxytocin, dopamine, estrogen, and endorphins, each playing a vital role in our emotional equilibrium. Oxytocin, often called the love hormone, helps us bond and feel secure. Dopamine, the pleasure chemical, reinforces joy and reward. Estrogen contributes to mood regulation and cognitive function, while endorphins act as natural painkillers and mood lifters. Together, they create a sense of well-being, confidence, and emotional connection, not just with our partners, but with ourselves. When sexual activity is absent for a prolonged period, especially when it's unintentional or tied to emotional suppression, this hormonal flow begins to diminish. For many women, the body doesn't just pause. It starts to send signals through mood swings, increased irritability, sadness, or even symptoms resembling mild depression or anxiety. This isn't about weakness or emotional instability, it's about biology. Without the regular release of feel-good hormones, the brain can struggle to regulate mood. Everyday stressors may feel heavier, patience may wear thinner, and moments of joy can seem fewer and further between. This change is often gradual and subtle. At first, it might look like simply feeling off or less enthusiastic. A woman might feel tired more often or less motivated to engage in social activities. Over time, this can evolve into more pronounced mood fluctuations, moments of unexplained sadness, frustration, or even apathy. These emotional shifts aren't imagined, they are chemically rooted. When estrogen levels fluctuate, for instance, serotonin in production, the key mood stabilizing neurotransmitter, also takes a hit. That's why many women who experience hormonal changes due to lack of sex, menopause, or birth control adjustments often report feeling low or mentally foggy. In our busy lives, we often dismiss these signs. We blame them on work stress, lack of sleep, or the demands of motherhood. But the truth is, intimacy is part of our emotional and hormonal ecosystem. Sex, especially when it's fulfilling and consensual, isn't just a luxury. It's a wellness tool. It helps stabilize hormones, promotes deep relaxation, and allows the nervous system to reset. Without it, women may find themselves unknowingly trapped in a cycle of emotional burnout. For single women, widows, or those in relationships where intimacy has faded, the experience of hormonal imbalance can be even more complex. There's often a deep inner conflict between emotional independence and the body's biological yearning for connection and release. Some women internalize this, believing there's something wrong with them for feeling moodier or more sensitive. But it's not a personal flaw, it's a physiological response. And here's another layer: stress. Chronic stress itself raises cortisol levels, the body's primary stress hormone. When cortisol is high for long periods, it suppresses the production of sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone. In other words, not only does lack of sex contribute to stress, but stress also diminishes sexual desire, creating a feedback loop that's hard to break. This imbalance can lead to heightened anxiety, restlessness, sleep issues, and even problems with memory and concentration. Of course, sex isn't the only way to balance hormones, but it is one of the most natural and holistic ones. Regular intimacy, when safe and wanted, can lower cortisol, boost oxytocin, and recalibrate the body's hormonal rhythm. For women especially, oxytocin plays a significant role in reducing stress and enhancing mood. It even promotes emotional bonding, which makes us feel secure and supported, both vital elements for psychological health. The hormonal impact of abstinence also intersects with reproductive health. A woman's menstrual cycle, fertility, and even perimenopausal symptoms can be affected by the lack of regular sexual activity. Some women report irregular periods or intensified PMS symptoms when they're not sexually active. This is partly due to how sexual activity stimulates blood flow, pelvic muscle tone, and hormonal regulation. When that stimulation is absent, the body may begin to operate with reduced efficiency in those areas. What's often overlooked in conversations around this topic is how society shapes our understanding and misunderstanding of female sexuality. Many women are taught to separate sex from self-care or to view desire as something optional or even shameful. That mindset can cause us to ignore the very real biological consequences of sexual deprivation. When we are disconnected from our bodies in this way, it becomes easier to dismiss the emotional and hormonal changes we experience. That's why awareness is crucial. Recognizing that mood swings or emotional instability may have a biological origin rooted in hormonal shifts can be a powerful first step towards self-compassion. Instead of thinking, "Why am I so moody lately?" we can ask, "Is my body missing something that used to help me regulate my mood?" It's also important to understand that this isn't about being in a relationship or not. Intimacy comes in many forms, including self-pleasure, which also triggers the same hormonal responses. Women don't need a partner to experience the benefits of oxytocin, dopamine, or endorphins. Exploring our own pleasure can be just as healing, empowering, and hormonally beneficial. Reclaiming that connection with our bodies, without shame or guilt, is one of the most transformative acts of self-love a woman can practice. In conclusion, when sex disappears from a woman's life, whether by choice, circumstance, or emotional distance, it's not just the body that notices. The mind, the mood, and the hormones all feel the shift. Hormonal imbalance isn't just a medical term. It's a lived reality for many women navigating the complexities of modern life, relationships, and personal healing. Understanding the biological roots of our emotional state allows us to take our power back. Not just by seeking intimacy for its own sake, but by honoring the vital role our sexual health plays in our overall wellness. When we think of immunity, we often picture vitamins, green smoothies, or the occasional visit to the doctor during flu season. What we rarely associate with a strong immune system is regular, healthy sexual activity. Yet, the connection between sex and immune function is not only real, it's deeply significant, especially for women. The absence of sex, particularly over extended periods, can have surprising and subtle effects on how well our immune system defends us from illness, inflammation, and chronic fatigue. The immune system is a complex web of biological responses designed to protect the body against harmful invaders like bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens. It operates most efficiently when the body is in balance emotionally, hormonally, and physically. Regular sexual activity plays a unique role in maintaining that balance, acting as a kind of natural immune booster. For women, this isn't just about defense against illness, it's about resilience, energy, and overall vitality. During sex, the body engages in a physiological process that stimulates the release of beneficial hormones and neurotransmitters. These include oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and even immunoglobulin, a Ig, an antibody that plays a crucial role in the immune function of mucous membranes. Studies have shown that individuals who engage in sex at least once or twice a week tend to have significantly higher levels of Ig than those who are abstinent. This antibody acts as the first line of defense against respiratory illnesses, gastrointestinal infections, and other common ailments. When sexual activity is absent, especially when coupled with high levels of stress or emotional stagnation, the body may begin to show signs of weakened immune response. Women might notice they catch colds more easily, take longer to recover from minor illnesses, or experience more frequent fatigue and body aches. These symptoms may not immediately trigger concern, but over time, they can erode a woman's sense of well-being and stamina. What's more, chronic inflammation, often linked to low immunity, can increase the risk of more serious health conditions, including autoimmune disorders, cardiovascular issues, and even certain types of cancer. The relationship between sexual inactivity and immune suppression is especially notable in how it intersects with stress. Stress is an immune suppressant. When cortisol, the stress hormone, remains elevated over time, it not only interferes with mood and sleep, but also impairs the body's ability to fight off infection. Sex is one of the most natural ways to reduce cortisol levels. During and after intimacy, the body experiences a drop in cortisol and a boost in mood, stabilizing chemicals. This reduction in stress creates a more supportive environment for immune function to thrive. In the absence of sex, especially when not replaced by other forms of stress relief or physical intimacy, cortisol levels may remain consistently high. Over time, this places strain on the immune system, leading to chronic fatigue, frequent illnesses, and an overall sense of being run down. For women juggling careers, families, and emotional labor, the lack of a physiological outlet like sex can result in the body being in a near constant state of low-grade stress. This isn't just exhausting, it can be dangerous. It's also important to consider how sexual intimacy promotes cardiovascular circulation. During sex, the heart rate increases, blood vessels expand, and oxygen flow improves, all of which contribute to a more robust immune function. Good circulation ensures that white blood cells, which are central to the body's defense mechanisms, are transported efficiently throughout the body. When this circulation is lacking due to sexual inactivity and a sedentary lifestyle, the immune system doesn't receive the same level of support. On a psychological level, a lack of sex can also affect immune health by contributing to feelings of loneliness, isolation, or emotional disconnection. While not often talked about, emotional connection, whether through physical intimacy or close companionship, has a tangible impact on immune strength. Studies show that people who feel emotionally supported tend to have stronger immune responses to illness. For women who are often social and emotional nurturers, the absence of closeness, particularly the type that comes with physical affection, can lead to increased vulnerability to illness. Emotional well-being and physical immunity are more deeply intertwined than we give credit for. Moreover, sexual activity contributes to better sleep quality, which is another vital pillar of a healthy immune system. Orgasm and physical satisfaction help the body produce more prolactin and oxytocin, both of which promote deeper, more restful sleep. And good sleep is when the body does most of its immune repair work, generating white blood cells, producing protective proteins, and flushing out toxins. Without the deep rest that often follows sexual activity, women may find themselves sleep-deprived or experiencing poor quality rest, both of which compromise immune defenses. There is also a more subtle, almost energetic aspect to immunity that should not be ignored. Sexual energy is life force energy. It fuels our creativity, our passion, and our engagement with the world. When this energy is suppressed, either through abstinence or emotional disconnection, many women describe feeling stagnant, uninspired, or low in motivation. This stagnation is not just a mental block, it reflects in the body's immune resilience as well. A woman who feels vibrant and connected is often healthier because her body is operating with a sense of purpose and pleasure. That inner vitality is a powerful ally in staying well. It's crucial to emphasize that this is not about pressuring anyone into sexual activity, nor is it about defining health purely by whether or not someone is sexually active. What it is about is understanding that sex is part of the body's natural rhythm, and when that rhythm is paused, especially without conscious replacement through other nurturing, intimate, or physical means, the body can experience real and measurable effects. For many women, the key is not necessarily in restoring sexual activity with a partner, but in reconnecting with their own bodies through touch, movement, mindfulness, or solo pleasure. Self-pleasure, for instance, can also stimulate many of the same immune-supportive responses that partnered sex provides. Masturbation increases blood flow, releases mood-elevating and immune-supporting hormones, and reduces stress. Women who embrace their own sensuality and prioritize self-connection often experience better mental and physical health. Releasing the stigma around this kind of intimacy is essential if we are to truly empower women to care for their bodies on all levels. In the end, a weakened immune system is not just a medical issue, it's a message. It's the body's quiet way of saying that something is out of sync, that something vital may be missing. For many women, the absence of sex, and the hormonal, emotional, and physical benefits it brings, may be one of the missing pieces. By paying attention to this connection, by honoring our need for closeness, pleasure, and release, we give ourselves permission to heal, to strengthen, and to live fully alive. When conversations about sex fade into silence, so too does the awareness of its deeper, more intimate effects, particularly on a woman's body. Vaginal health and libido are often seen as separate from one another, yet they are deeply intertwined. What many don't realize is that the absence of sex, especially over time, can create a chain reaction within a woman's body that affects not just desire, but also the very function and wellness of her reproductive system. These changes may be subtle at first, but can become increasingly uncomfortable, sometimes even distressing, if left unaddressed. The vagina is a dynamic, self-regulating organ that thrives on regular circulation, hormonal balance, and healthy bacterial flora. Sexual activity, whether through intercourse, self-pleasure, or any form of arousal, stimulates blood flow to the pelvic region, increases lubrication, and helps maintain elasticity in the vaginal tissues. When sexual activity is missing for extended periods, especially when paired with stress, hormonal changes, or aging, those vital functions can begin to slow down. Reduced blood flow means less oxygen and fewer nutrients reaching the vaginal walls, which can result in thinning tissue, dryness, and discomfort. This shift doesn't always feel dramatic or immediate. In fact, many women don't even notice the early signs. A little dryness here, some minor irritation there. It's easy to dismiss these symptoms as a temporary glitch. But over time, the lack of stimulation can contribute to a condition known as vaginal atrophy, where the vaginal walls become thin, dry, and less elastic. This condition is most common in menopausal women, but can occur at any age if sexual inactivity is prolonged and other health or hormonal factors are present. Along with these physical changes comes a decrease in natural lubrication. Vaginal lubrication is largely stimulated by arousal, which is triggered not just by desire, but by regular sexual engagement. When sexual activity is absent, the body produces less estrogen and other arousal-related hormones that prompt lubrication. This can make any future sexual activity uncomfortable or even painful, which then leads to a cycle of avoidance. Women begin to associate intimacy with discomfort, which further dampens the desire to be sexually active. This brings us to the second half of this topic: libido. A woman's sex drive is not merely psychological, it is biological, emotional, and energetic. When the body experiences pleasure, the brain responds with a surge of dopamine and oxytocin neurochemicals that reinforce the desire to repeat the experience. In the absence of sex, these signals grow quieter. The brain becomes less primed for arousal, less responsive to sexual cues, and less likely to generate desire spontaneously. In other words, the less sex a woman has, the less she wants it. Not necessarily because she no longer values intimacy, but because the body stops prompting her to seek it. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of female sexuality. Women are often labeled as having low libido, but in truth, many have simply lost connection with the physiological and emotional rhythm that fuels desire. This disconnection is not a flaw, it's a response. Life's pressures, hormonal shifts, relationship challenges, and emotional fatigue all play a role. And when sex drops off the radar, libido often follows, quietly and gradually. The psychological toll of this can be heavy. Many women begin to question themselves. Why don't I feel turned on anymore? What happened to my passion? These questions can lead to guilt, shame, or self-blame, especially in cultures where a woman's sexual responsiveness is tied to her identity or her relationship role. But the truth is, libido doesn't vanish overnight. It's like a fire that hasn't been tended. It needs attention, care, and sometimes a gentle reignition. Another key factor is the role of pelvic floor muscles. Regular sexual activity helps keep these muscles toned, responsive, and engaged. Without sex or other forms of physical stimulation, pelvic floor muscles can weaken over time, contributing to urinary incontinence, decreased sensation, and reduced orgasmic response. When the pelvic region is neglected, it becomes not only less functional but also less sensitive to pleasure. This further contributes to a drop in libido because the body becomes less associated with reward and more with discomfort or disinterest. Self-pleasure, again, becomes an essential tool for reclaiming both vaginal health and libido. Arousal increases blood flow, stimulates the vaginal walls, maintains lubrication, and helps keep tissues supple. It also reinforces the brain's connection to pleasure, which can gradually restore the body's natural hunger for intimacy. For women who are not sexually active with a partner, this practice isn't just a form of release. It's a form of maintenance, a way to nourish a part of themselves that deserves just as much attention as any other aspect of health. There is also a cultural silence around this subject that needs to be broken. Vaginal health is too often reduced to hygiene products and annual exams, while libido is brushed off as something that fades with age or disappears without reason. But women deserve more than that. They deserve full understanding and ownership of their sensual bodies not only in youth but throughout their entire lives. When sex is missing, it should not be a source of shame, but rather an invitation to explore what the body needs and how best to support it. For women in long-term relationships where sexual activity has waned, the consequences of decreased vaginal health and libido can impact the emotional connection between partners. It's not uncommon for distance to form, not out of a lack of love, but because physical intimacy has become a source of anxiety or disconnection. That emotional distance can grow if partners don't understand the very real biological shifts at play. Open communication, empathy, and a shared effort to reintroduce intimacy slowly and without pressure can help repair both the physical and emotional bridge. Ultimately, this topic circles back to self-awareness and self-respect. The female body is remarkably intelligent and sensitive. When it begins to signal discomfort, disinterest, or dryness, it's not betraying us. It's inviting us to listen more closely. Sexual wellness is not a luxury. It's a part of holistic health, just like nutrition, movement, and mental well-being. To ignore it is to ignore an essential source of power, vitality, and joy. The absence of sex doesn't have to mean the absence of pleasure, passion, or feminine energy. But it does require awareness. It requires us to look inward, to recognize the signs our bodies are sending, and to honor them with curiosity and care. Vaginal health and libido are not merely about intimacy with others. They're about intimacy with ourselves, and in that space of reconnection, women can rediscover not only the potential for pleasure, but the strength and beauty of their own aliveness. There's a quiet weight that many women carry when sexual intimacy is absent from their lives, though they may not always recognize where it comes from. It's not just about missing physical pleasure. It's the subtle, accumulating emotional heaviness, the shifting tides in self-perception, and the quiet erosion of one's sense of aliveness. The mental and emotional toll of not having sex, especially for women, is not often talked about openly. But its effects are real and they run deep, touching everything from self-worth to confidence to the way a woman moves through the world. Sex is not just an act. It's an expression of connection, vulnerability, and vitality. For many women, it's also a way to feel seen, desired, and embraced in a way that reaches far beyond the physical. When sexual intimacy fades, the space it once filled does not always remain neutral. Instead, it can become crowded with doubt, restlessness, and a kind of emotional disconnection that slowly trickles into other areas of life. That missing energy can show up as irritability, a dip in motivation, or an increasing sense of being not quite yourself, without being able to fully explain why. One of the first and most common emotional consequences of prolonged sexual inactivity is a decline in mood. Sexual activity triggers the release of endorphins, oxytocin, and dopamine, chemicals that naturally reduce anxiety, elevate mood, and promote feelings of bonding and security. Without this regular neurological boost, a woman may find herself more prone to stress, sadness, or even symptoms of depression. And because these shifts often happen gradually, it can be difficult to connect them directly to the lack of sexual intimacy. It can simply feel like life is heavier, grayer, less vibrant. For women who have previously associated sex with closeness or emotional bonding, the absence of it can create a sense of isolation. Even if a woman is surrounded by friends, family, and a busy schedule, she may still feel a kind of quiet loneliness, the kind that comes from not being intimately touched, not being emotionally mirrored in those deeply vulnerable moments that sex can offer. Over time, this absence can lead to feelings of being undesired or invisible, even if that perception isn't rooted in reality. The mind begins to spin stories. Maybe I'm not attractive anymore. Maybe I'm no longer lovable. Or maybe I've become emotionally closed off. These narratives, though often untrue, can dig in deeply and affect a woman's self-esteem. Self-confidence is one of the areas most subtly affected. It isn't always about how a woman looks, it's about how she feels in her own skin. Sexual intimacy reinforces that sense of embodiment, of feeling grounded and alive inside one's body. When it's missing, that internal connection can weaken. A woman may begin to feel disconnected from her sensual self, from her capacity for pleasure, and from her natural femininity. That disconnection can influence how she dresses, how she speaks, how she carries herself. She might become more guarded, less expressive, or less open to spontaneity. Over time, this shift can create emotional distance not just with others, but within herself. Relationships are also affected. In partnerships where sex has faded or disappeared, emotional tension can begin to build. Resentment, confusion, and unspoken frustration can take root. The absence of physical connection may be interpreted as emotional detachment, even when that's not the case. Without the vulnerability and closeness that sexual intimacy often brings, communication may become more transactional or surface level. For many women, this emotional distance becomes more painful than the absence of sex itself. They may miss the laughter, the cuddling, the whispered words in the dark, the feeling of being held both physically and emotionally. And when that space remains empty for too long, a sense of longing sets in, a longing not just for sex, but for closeness, for being known deeply and tenderly. There's also a profound energetic shift that occurs when sexual expression is suppressed. Sexual energy is creative energy. It fuels not only desire but also passion, creativity, and a zest for life. When that energy is not expressed, it doesn't simply disappear, it often gets repressed, redirected, or blocked. Women may find themselves less inspired, more emotionally stagnant, or creatively stuck. The world may feel duller. The things that once brought excitement may now feel like obligations. That inner fire, that sense of aliveness, grows dimmer with each passing month of disconnection. For some women, especially those who have chosen or found themselves in periods of celibacy, the emotional impact can be even more complex. There may be conflicting feelings, pride in reclaiming agency over their bodies, but also grief for what has been lost. There may be freedom and independence, but also moments of intense emotional hunger for closeness. Navigating this space requires self-compassion. It requires honoring the emotional nuances of a woman's sexuality, understanding that desire isn't just physical. It's emotional, relational, and deeply human. The absence of sex can also impact a woman's relationship with pleasure as a whole. Pleasure in all its forms, whether it's through food, laughter, music, or touch, is essential for emotional well-being. When one form of pleasure is consistently denied or absent, it can signal to the brain and body that pleasure itself is unsafe, unnecessary, or inaccessible. This message can lead to emotional dullness, a state in which joy is harder to feel and connection harder to sustain. The world becomes more about function than feeling, more about surviving than savoring. And yet, the most powerful truth is this: the effects of sexual absence are not irreversible. The emotional and mental toll is not a life sentence. It's a wake-up call. It's the body and soul asking to be remembered, to be touched, to be nourished. Reconnection doesn't always begin with another person. It can begin with oneself, with small acts of self-kindness, with exploring what brings pleasure and inspiration, with learning to feel again. Whether through sensual movement, creative expression, self-touch, or even therapy, the process of coming back to one's sexual self is deeply healing. It brings back color to the gray. It brings back softness where there was tension, warmth where there was numbness. For many women, this journey is not linear. There are moments of resistance, of grief, of rediscovery. But with each step, something sacred returns, a sense of self that is whole, radiant, and unapologetically alive. And in reclaiming that, the emotional heaviness begins to lift. Confidence slowly rebuilds. Connection begins to deepen, not just with others, but within. The mental fog clears, and in its place comes clarity, passion, and the unshakable truth that a woman's sexuality is not a luxury. It is a source of strength, joy, and emotional resilience.